Now it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about the intersection of science, faith, and pop culture and how culturally relevant topics can be used to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with theologian Krista Bontrager.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk about the 50th anniversary of the San Quentin album by Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, I even wore my shirt.
You did.
I'm glad to see that you've got your
I always wear
on.
black. But I mean, it might seem odd that we're even talking about Johnny Cash and an apologetics ministry and show, but let's dive into first why you're such a Johnny Cash fan. Maybe that'll help us unpack why this is relevant.
Yeah, well, just statistically speaking, he's impressive. He's one of, I like to call him the greatest Christian artist of the 20th century, but he really is one of the greatest artists. He's in both the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Country Music Hall of Fame. He's one of the only ones that is in both. But what I like about him is that he really sang about a lot of themes, both related to his understanding of sin and himself as a sinner, a person who struggled with deep sin, but also his encounter with amazing grace. And he was very public about being a Christian and his relationship with Jesus and the role that that had had in his life.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, because maybe people might not know about his religious background. So tell us a little bit more.
Sure, yeah. He was born in Dyess, Arkansas on a sharecropper farm. His father was a sharecropper and they raised cotton. He joined the military when he was 17 years old, and he went and he was stationed overseas. But he was raised within the environment of a Christian home. He would listen to the Grand Ole Opry on the radio with his family. His mother sang to him hymns. He memorized the hymn book while his brother was memorizing the Bible.
Oh, wow.
And he just would love to sing, and music was a big part of his life, but so was his faith. But when he went off into the military and then rose to fame in rock and roll in the 50s, he started drifting from his faith, and then had quite a kind of reconversion of coming back to his faith when he struggled with drugs.
Wow. So now we're talking about the anniversary of the San Quentin album.
Sure.
Why did Johnny Cash do concerts in prisons, and how is that connected to his faith?
Yeah, and it does have a deep connection because he did one prison album. His first one is in 1968. It was Folsom, and then the second one was 1969. It was in San Quentin. But he took literally the verse about visiting those who were in prison, and he saw it as really flowing out of his Christian faith. And he knew that he wanted to really try to live out the words of Jesus. He sang about them, but he also really wanted to live them out. And he was never in prison. That's a common misconception. He did spend a few days in jail for drugs, but he was never in prison. But prisoners identified with him because he was willing to go to them.
Right. And that's such a beautiful example of our faith in action, taking a Bible verse about going and visiting these prisoners and actually doing that, and then doing it in a way that he was gifted. You know, he was able to create and sing great music, so do it in that way.
Yeah.
So let me ask, what's your favorite song on the album?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. But probably my favorite on that particular album would be the title track of San Quentin, that he wrote actually the day before the concert. He was just so prolific. It's amazing. But he wrote the song about, from the perspective of a prisoner within San Quentin, and just talking about how rough it was on a person's soul, and that impact of prison life really had a distorting effect on the soul of humanity, and wrestling with that. And in the midst of the concert, he always had gospel songs too. And he brought big acts. It wasn't just some podunk show. He brought big name acts with him into the prison environment to sing songs too. And they always did gospel songs as well as the hits from the radio.
So that's such a powerful ministry, to be able to go use your platform to say, I'm going to reach these prisoners and speak truth and speak the gospel and into their hearts and minds and souls. Such a beautiful act for him to do. Now, I want to ask, the reason why we're doing this segment at all is, why do you think someone like Johnny Cash, like his music resonates across multiple generations?
Yeah, that's a great question because it really does. Like my daughter enjoys. I've submitted my children to endless Johnny Cash, but they really do like some of the songs on their own. And in their generation, there's been some songs that people identify with. But you know, he was on the radio for 50 years, a long time. I think what resonates with so many people is the honesty and the authenticity of the music that he talks about. Real struggles. It's not like Christian songs you hear on Christian radio today where I think like, where are these people's problems? He would talk about drug problems and problems with violence and problems of deep difficulty and the flaw of the human condition. He was extremely honest in his songs, but there was also this redemptive element that grace and Jesus was the answer. He's one of the only artists I can think of that could perform for Billy Graham and my grandparents and prisoners.
And prisoners, yeah.
But the gospel is universal, and he is a great example of how to have faith and be in public, but still do good art.
Right. And you talked also, too, about his lyrics and how profound they were. Even the reason why he wore black and why he was the man in black.
Yeah, we should end the segment with that. And why did he wear black? And he has a great song called Man in Black. It's probably one of my all-time favorite songs. But he talks about how it's a symbol of him identifying with people who have been oppressed, people who have gone through difficulties in their life, and that he's kind of a public reminder that these people are among us. They're not invisible, that we need to see them. And I think if I look at the larger context of his life, he was saying the gospel is for them too.
Right. And that's such a beautiful point to make, is that, you know, the marginalized, the oppressed, those who are dealing with injustices, that they're seen and that the gospel's for them.
Yeah.
And that's what Johnny Cash was about.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking about this.